Your book cover has one job: to stop a reader scrolling and make them look twice. That's when it's on a page of search results, of course. On the bookshelf, your spine, mostly your title, will be the first step before they see the cover. Everything else, the blurb, the reviews, the description, only gets a chance if the cover and spine do their job first. That's essentially how a sales funnel works. You move a potential reader through a journey which starts with the spine, then the cover, then either the description or the back cover and blurb. All this is a typical buying sequence, depending on whether your book is online or on a store shelf. This is potentially a more exacting process than it sounds. On Amazon or other online stores, your cover is initially seen at thumbnail size, roughly the size of a postage stamp on most screens. It has to work at that scale first. The reader has to click on it before they see it full size. If it doesn't come over clearly at thumbnail size, the reader never gets to the detail. Let's start with genre identity for the requirements you need to consider. Readers don't consciously analyse covers, they respond to them, usually emotionally. And that's true of most sales processes. When a thriller reader sees a book with a high contrast typography, dark colours and a specific visual vocabulary, they recognise it as a thriller and give it attention. When a romance reader sees soft colour palettes, certain typographic choices and a particular kind of imagery, they register it as romance. This genre signalling is not a limitation, it's a step in the communication between you as the author and them as the reader. It tells the right reader that this book is for them. A cover that doesn't clearly signal its genre is a cover that loses its audience before anyone reads a word. It may be beautiful, it may be original, but if the reader can't place it in their reading world, they move past it. So you're unlikely to pull in a romance reader with shocking imagery, and you're unlikely to attract someone after a war story with a colourful watercolour image. You need a single clear focal point. The best covers do one thing visually, one dominant image, one strong typographic treatment, one visual idea. Covers that try to show the whole story, multiple characters, multiple settings, multiple competing elements, they become cluttered at full size and unreadable at thumbnail. Typography is important. The title and author name usually need to be legible, appropriately sized and typographically appropriate for the genre. Script fonts on thrillers, sans serif minimalism on cozy mysteries, these are mismatches that signal something's off, even if the reader can't articulate why. Quality execution. This one is harder to define but immediately recognisable. A professionally designed cover has the right proportions, the right colour relationships, the right typographic hierarchy. A cover assembled in Canva from stock assets usually doesn't. Not because the tools are inadequate, but because cover design is a professional skill and most people don't have it. Here are some things that either don't work or will put your potential reader off. Firstly, an emotive subject, AI-generated imagery as the cover is still a bad idea. Current AI image generation is getting progressively better and harder to identify as being AI. There are, however, still tells that niggle at the back of a reader's mind and repels rather than attracts. It often lacks the intentional choices of a cover designed by someone who understands what the book needs to communicate and to whom. There's also a problem with ownership, which goes beyond the visual. AI-generated images aren't something you retain ownership of, so you have potentially less control over how your work is used. This is still a legal grey area, but I suspect it will fall in favour of the AI producers rather than the user base. Author photos on the cover. This works for established celebrities. For an unknown first-time author, it has no draw for the reader and takes up space that should be doing more useful sales work. I'll actually extend this out to photos in general. They can work wonders for a non-fiction cover if used the right way, but the majority of photographic novel covers just give the impression that the author couldn't do a decent job of it. Some genres do tend towards photographs though. Mostly they're seen on the covers of spicy romance. Unless you want your work to be grouped visually with pornography, I'd steer clear of photo covers. One other point on photos before I move on. Stock photos can, and often are, be used on covers to good effect. That tends to be true when the image is then heavily modified and manipulated into something else by the designer. Espionage and techno-thrillers may have stock images of things like satellites or computers, which are then rendered in silhouette or become colour-cast background hints. That can be very effective, but the photo has been turned into something else entirely. And cluttered covers, a scene showing all the characters and all the settings described in the book. It reads as amateur and loses any sense of focal hierarchy. Chances are the reader won't see what's there in thumbnail size anyway. Covers that look like no other book in the genre. This is a tricky balance to address. You want your cover to look like a better version of the other successful books in your category, not like something entirely different. Readers buy what they recognise. The art is in standing out while still being part of the crowd. Maybe akin to a blue suit in a sea of black or grey. It's the same, but still draws the eye. It's not an easy line to navigate. So the bottom line, a good cover is a professional investment, not a design project. Find a designer with a portfolio of book covers in your genre. Look at what they've produced. A small word of caution though, longevity in the business doesn't automatically mean talent, nor does a high cost quote. I've worked with designers who have decades of experience who produce mediocre work. I've also worked with designers fresh to the industry who have a spark about them and can run circles around the competition. As with most service-based purchases, make sure you're comfortable that you can work with your choice of designer, and if anything doesn't feel right, look for someone else. Once you have your chosen designer, brief them on the genre, the tone, the key visual elements you want to contain. Then let them do their job. The more leeway you give them to apply their expertise, the better the end result will be. The return on a good cover in terms of conversion, browsers becoming buyers, is measurable. You're often not there in person to sell your work, so the cover has to sell it for you. So don't cut this corner.